skill.
It doesn't even matter. You get a 16-year-old that knows what they're doing, and you start to suffocate on your lack of ability to breathe, and you become a child in a way that your ego is going to hate, and then you become the puddle on the floor that just gives in after a while, and you're like, I guess I need to know more about this. Or you do the other thing and you go, that jiu-jitsu looks gay, rolling around on the floor and stuff. I'm not going to do that. And then you walk away from it, never knowing any more, but keeping your ego intact. And that's what most guys do.
Yeah, I mean, like, are we talking? Are we going? Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm like, at some point, because I want to, you get to where you have at least a basic understanding and basic ability. And, you have to, because I've done sports all my life, and I get like every 5 years I change sports because I get where you get
a little bored after you get a little good at it.
Like I've had world records in a number of different sports, and I just get to where I can't get any better, and I'm like, what's the point of doing it? And then I find something else.
Well, you can get better, but just under the marker. It's like if you don't have the higher thing to shoot for, you're not interested anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like I just kind of find it. It's exciting when you're getting better at the beginning because it keeps you interested, and then when you have to do months and months and months to make a tiny improvement, and it's like
that's where the gods get born there.
Yeah, exactly. After a while, it's like, okay, I'm 50-something years old.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? But it's fun.
Well, I'm glad you guys showed up. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having us on.
Sitting with me, Sean Baker, Paul Soldino.
That's right.
Right, and you're the doctor backup. Is that the deal?
He's my backup.
You guys
doctor.
are the double team. You're like, listen, I've got efficacy. I've done this. I walked it. Now I need some metrics. Is that what happened?
Two doctors.
Yeah, we're both doctors.
Okay.
So Paul's been doing it for a while, and he's got a really just a nice deeper dive into what some of the stuff that I've been doing for a couple of years, and so I think it's we've both got strengths.
How long have you been into it?
8 months. I've been doing strict carnivore.
Okay.
Been into it about a year.
So you're new in it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so is that what the beginning of your studies also was just the last 8 months or so, or had it piqued your interest before you jumped in,
Well, I've been into like functional medicine and root cause medicine for years and years and years. I was a PA in cardiology before I went to medical school. I'm just at the end of my 4-year residency. So
cool.
I've been in it for 12 years in medicine and trying to understand what's causing illness and the roots of illness. And so I've been thinking about food and how it influences the immune system for a long time. And in the last year, I've sort of discovered this pretty radical concept that plants might actually not be good for us. And that's led to the deep dive,
Is that due to the enzymes and antibodies that plants have that when they start to become consumed, they become irritants for animals? I mean, as a defense mechanism, is that the basic crux of it?
Yeah, plants are full of toxins. There's all different types of toxins in plants.
You never think of a plant attacking you, but that's exactly what it does, right?
Well, I mean, we think about plant evolution. Plants and animals have been co-evolving for hundreds of millions of years, back to the time of dinosaurs and prehistoric.
Right.
If plants didn't have some defense mechanisms, they would have been dead a long time ago, and it just has to do with, as humans, whether or not we can really handle those, and maybe some people are more exquisitely sensitive, but there's this kind of really disruptive concept that for a lot of people, plants might be causing inflammation and autoimmunity, which in Western medicine are diseases that we are horrible at fixing.
It's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, let me, because I'll add to that, because I think that, obviously we've been eating plants for a long time. I mean, we've been doing that. I think early on, humans have been on the planet 3 million years. We ate a lot of meat. We were hunters. I mean, it's clear as day. I mean, we look at the radioisotope data that's coming out, clearly shows human beings were as carnivorous or more so than even wolves. And so we ate a lot, and we probably ate some plants, and we do have some capacity to detoxify stuff. I can sit there, and most of us can eat some plants, and we're doing pretty good. But I think
isn't that the thing about gluten intolerance though? Is that like maybe everybody's gluten intolerant, but not everybody shows up as being super sick from it?
Well, I think gluten.
Is that a truth
I think
or not?
gluten for everybody is a toxin. We can talk about phytonutrients, they're all chemicals. And if I were to say, how much can you tolerate, that's just going to differ from person to person. I think in the modern environment, especially as we have so many things that disrupt our gut permeability, we have all these things that are kind of weakening us, and I think we become more susceptible. And some people become more susceptible to this stuff. And so I think there are people that are robust, particularly young people. They're kind of like, when you're young, you can eat anything.
Don't need a lot of sleep.
I mean, there's guys that are professional athletes, NFL guys are jacked and they look great, performing well, and they eat garbage. I mean, they're on McDonald's diet.
Most of the high performance fight. I mean, you look at what's his name, the most decorated swimmer in the world,
Michael Phelps,
most decorated athlete in the world, probably I would say. And you look at his diet and you're like, that ho-hos and everything. And it's like everything's on board. And I think when you're operating an engine that's that high, you couldn't say, well, I can feed you better. It's like you're the most decorated guy in the world. I don't know what better means.
Yeah, sometimes the proof's in the pudding. But again, I think there's a lot of people mistake youth for health.
Right.
And I think we're pretty robust creatures. But as time goes on, and you've been an athlete, as years pile up, you got to do things a little different than you can do in your 20s. And I think diet is a huge part of that. And I think that getting good nutrition and nutrient-dense nutrition, there's no doubt, and people that are on the plant-based side will disagree with it, but clearly the science shows that animal-based nutrition is so much more human appropriate and bioavailable, and it doesn't come with these things like anti-nutrients, which, if you eat like a bowl of spinach, right? Spinach, you think, spinach is great. Popeye ate that, right? He got his muscles. There are some things in spinach that are potentially beneficial, but there are things like oxalates in spinach. Oxalates in spinach will decrease our ability to absorb calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, all these things. It's decreasing our ability to get these nutrition, and you don't need the phytonutrients. There's no human need for those things. They may have an impact, and Paul talks pretty well about this. So the phytonutrients, basically what happens is we have a system to deal with those toxins, and it upregulates those things. And so now we've upregulated our defense systems because we're like, you just poisoned me. So the body responds by saying, I'm gonna protect myself. So it builds up these systems. That's not necessarily always a good thing, because there's side effects. So it may be
there's stressors involved in that. And so now you've taken your body to be in maybe it's mild, but a semi-traumatic state.
Sure,
is that not right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Your body's on defense now. You've raising cortisol levels potentially. You've raising these natural things that
so you think fight. Fuck vegetables altogether?
I think they are. So here's what I would say.
Because it's a crazy thing, right?
They're not.
I just go, I felt better though.
Yeah.
And then I would make me suspicious that, like, if I'm just eating all meat, like in that couple months, I'm like, what about grilled onions on there? Does it? And then I start thinking that it's not affecting things. It does change things, and I think that reductive aspect, it made it really interesting conversation-wise for me about what is helpful.
So I think that this is a problem. We have we've been told. I was told by my mom, eat your vegetables.
Of course.
I was at dinner with my mama, and she's
like, almost a scolding.
And she was like, "Yeah, you hated vegetables as a kid." And my dad made me eat vegetables. I remember sitting there. He had a meatloaf, and he threw onions in there. Dad, I don't like those onions. He goes, "Well, you can't even taste them." I'm, yeah. If I couldn't taste them, why'd you put them in there? What's the point? Yeah, they force you to eat them. And my dad, 75, goes, yeah, I never liked vegetables anyway. And so I'm like, why'd you make me eat that stuff? But so we're like being told we have to eat these. And since nutrition, the nutrition field evolved in 1917. This is when the American Dietetic Association was founded. There's a gal named Lena Cooper. She was a Seventh-day Adventist. And their religion is basically meat is bad. Everybody should be a vegetarian. And this is where the very beginnings of nutrition science began. And it's been in there ever since that time. And so we have epidemiologic studies that say, people that eat fruits and vegetables have a better outcome, right? We see that in the population studies. But the problem is, if I say, Tate, don't eat meat, it's bad for you. And you say, fuck you, I'm going to eat meat because I like meat,
right.
and I don't care. And then you're probably going to say, well, I'm going to drink a beer and I'm going to go smoke and I'm going to not wear my seatbelt and I'm just going to have I don't care. And that's what we see. It's called a healthy user bias, and we see that all the time. But when you clinically, with randomized control trials, look at what happens when you add fruits and vegetables in people's diets, and you critically look at that, the results are like meh, sometimes negative, sometimes a little good. They're not really convincing, and so. That's but we just have this belief.
What do you think about cyclical? Because in a certain way, I think like I said, man, when I followed a strict carnivore diet, I felt great. Like everything's great, emotions great, critical thinking's great, aesthetics, like my energy, everything. I felt like all right, cool. Now I've done that. I've been ketogenic, and I think I stayed ketogenic for maybe the longest was like 8 or 9 months at a stretch, right? And at the end point of that, I felt like cortisol levels maybe were dipping, but like again, I listened to you on Joe's, and I was like, he's a doctor, but he has the same science that I have of like, I tried it and I liked it. not a doctor.
Right.
Right. And so I was like, so what's happening to me? Right. And then, and Rob Wolf had said something about like, well, your cortisol levels are probably adjusted over time. And so this idea that we're all in this beta test, and if we're fed vegetables for a long time, fuck, you're only living till you're however old anyway. And like, who's to say what it is that had, poor effects on you? But this thing about staying with that for a long time, I just didn't know if I stay on that long enough, is the robbery, the withholding of other things from my system going to have deleterious effects for me? And I was wondering, like, with long-term exposure to just this way of eating, is it not better to be randomly cyclical, to have your body adjust to these things, within reason, not taking in anything that's going to be poisonous?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things going on with that. So, I mean, certainly, I'm aware of many people, and I've done this pretty much consistently for almost 3 years now, and a little over 2.5 years. So,
what are your departures when you go off of it? What are your?
I really don't.
Are you like, I love corn chips. I just can't.
No, I mean, so my son had a birthday party in November. He had, he had a little cake. I had a piece of cake. And it was, it tastes good. I like it. I mean, here's for me, I'm like, if I'm going to go off the diet, it's going to be for something I really like. Mm-hmm. It's going to be like some dessert, quite honestly.
Do you feel real shitty at the next day?
Yeah, I felt pretty crappy. Absolutely.
That's what I found too, because I found it was like when I took gluten out of my diet. I didn't know. I just did it on a suggestion, and then all of a sudden I had all this acid reflux, for years that I've been trying to deal with. And when I was gluten free, 2 weeks, I was like, I don't have that anymore. Yeah. I don't take meds for that anymore. And so that cleared up. But I didn't. Before that, I had no idea I was sick from that. And so I think most people go through life not because if your baseline is like, I feel kind of how I feel and this is okay, but it's really poor. You don't know because there's no way to base that off of, right? And so I think I don't know.
That's one of the most powerful pieces of it is that when people remove things from their diet and simplify their diet, they get such a better ability to separate the signal from the noise, and they can get a sense of the way foods are affecting them. People are eating McDonald's or chips or this or that. You don't actually know what's causing you to feel a certain way. And so there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge that can be gained from just simplifying the diet. It's one of the things that's really cool about a carnivorous diet is I think Sean and I would agree this is probably the way humans are built to eat. This is our most basic ancestral programming from a food perspective. And when
would you say it's for all people?
I would.
Okay.
I would, yeah. And
because you hear these things where you say, oh, well, these people, they grew up in this geographic area, and so they eat more like this. And that always seemed like, whenever I would hear people say that, it was always right in front of an excuse.
Right.
And do you know what I mean? It's like that argument.
To eat rice or to
eat. No, my people are supposed to eat a lot of bread or whatever. We're Italian or whatever the thing is, right?
Well, but I mean,
because you hear that argument, I think that's baloney.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there's some subtlety to that, but I mean, I think all human beings are made to eat meat. There is no human culture ever that did not have meat in their diet.
They say without meat cholesterol, without animal cholesterol, your brain really suffers. And they say the one thing that everybody that has Alzheimer's has is really low cholesterol. And so then when I start playing with my diets and my cholesterol goes through this, everybody freaks out at the doctor's office, but I'm feeling better than ever. And then my friends in the space are like, yeah, 300 is okay. Or whatever. They say they don't really know what the marker means either.
Yeah, I mean,
at this point.
There's a lot of, obviously we cholesterol is in every cell in our bodies and all of our cell memories. We need it. It has a role. Our body doesn't make cholesterol. Our liver makes 80% of it anyway. So our body has a use for cholesterol. It works for the immune system. It works for sex hormones. There's so many uses for cholesterol. And when you intentionally lower that, we see some significant negative effects, particularly if we look at longevity. Things like all-cause mortality. What are you going to die of? If you're going to die of cancer or Alzheimer's disease or infectious disease, if your cholesterol is low, the odds of that happening go up actually. And so the only associations are with cardiovascular disease. Now, cardiovascular disease kills most of the people, but the problem is there are different sets of populations. And so if you are on a diet that lowers your overall vascular inflammation, if you're on a diet that improves your insulin sensitivity, if you're on a diet that lowers your triglycerides and raises your HDL, and then you put cholesterol, total LDL cholesterol in that context, those things become meaningless at that point.
That's what people misunderstand about lipids. At a very basic level, the LDL cholesterol particle, the LDL, lipoprotein particle participates in the formation of the atherosclerotic plaque, but only if there's a dysfunctional endothelium, which is what Sean is describing, essentially with, when the inside of the vascular wall is dysfunctional and there's inflammation there, that is when there is a spark to light the fire. Without a dysfunctional endothelium, I think that there's a very strong growing group of people who believe strongly that the LDL molecule is not atherogenic in and of itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so like the what you're talking about would be the markers of inflammation, and sucrose kind of is what we're talking about in that way, is that the inflammation is what's really the tip off to the heart disease. And then if you want to upset the carrot cart and your whole shit is all fucked up anyway because of your diet, you add that on top of it, you're going to have catastrophic.
Yeah, it's like this is and Paul kind of alluded to this. This is an analogy. So say you want to start a fire. So what do you need? So you need some wood, you need some oxygen, you need a spark. And so cholesterol would be like the wood. But if there's no oxygen and there's no spark, that wood's not going anywhere. You're not going to start a fire with that. So if you think about cholesterol that way, you need it to have heart disease, but it doesn't cause it. It can participate. And
the thing we should be careful of is not so much cholesterol, but sugar intake.
Right. So the problem is
things that cause the inflammation, things that cause endothelial dysfunction, which are many. Sean is describing some of them. So things that can promote insulin resistance, but there are many things which can cause inflammation and endothelial dysfunction.
How far back is the medical community when they talk about cholesterol? Somebody that described it to me and said cholesterol was the first marker we could find in the blood, so right away people were scrambling to find a use for what that information meant, and then they thought, we can sell statins and we can collude this to mean that this is heart disease, and that was kind of a false flag is what people are saying. Even in the medical industry, I talked to a bunch of cardiologists, and they're all like, this is the new data we're trying to put out to people, that cholesterol is not dangerous in the way that we've been taught. Yeah. Is that still happening in schools?
It's crazy. Even at I guess I'm at the University of Washington, but I'll throw them under the bus a little bit. Even people there, that's one of the best universities in the world. On the West Coast, it's certainly one of the preeminent hospitals in the country, and many people in cardiology and internal medicine are still just basing risk calculations on LDL alone. So you said, how far back is the medical community? I'd say that the mainstream medical community is probably 15 years in the past in terms of the way we're thinking about this. This is like 2003, 2004. It's the way most people are thinking of it.
Is that a function of corporatocracy or like agreed driving a system instead of evolutional sense?
It's hard to say why it is.
Why, because that seems crazy.
Well, if you go back to the creation of medical schools, these things are the curriculums and the what we learn is largely funded by pharmaceutical industries.
Sure,
and so you're funded by them. This is how you're taught to think. I was 20 years ago when I was doing, they were telling everybody put statins in the drinking water. Everybody needs to be on it. That's what that was I was hearing from the professors. They said that we should put statins in the drinking water. And the problem is, here's the deal. Yeah, lipids are a problem if you're inflamed. Guess what? Everybody is inflamed. The whole population. We've all got this.
Except for you.
Well, except for a few people.
Except for when you can correct the diet, right? Except for when you can remove the inflammation. But yeah, what Sean is saying is right.
Yeah, so you've got 88% of the people in the United States right now that are metabolically not healthy. 88%. And so if you put 88% of the people and you raise their cholesterol, guess what? That's going to be a problem. But if you get in the healthy 12%, where you've got rid of all that insulin resistance and chronic inflammation and other things, then the cholesterol doesn't make a difference. So it's looking at associations in a population that you may not live in. So if I said all people in Russia, have this disease, and you say, well, I'm not Russian, but I'm an American. Right. It's the same thing. We're not in the same cohort, and so you have to look at different peoples. And anytime there's an association, first thing I say is, does that apply to every person in all situations? If the answer is no, like I can do a study and I'd say, I think gunshots to the head kill people. And I would say pretty much every person we tested on, the answer would be yes. It'd be a pretty easy study to do. But then I could say, cholesterol causes heart disease in all people, and then you get to where, what about this, what about that, and that's where we're at with that.
And if you look at the data, it clearly doesn't. If you look at the subgroup analyses, if you look at the sort of the further analyses of data like Framingham and stuff, high levels of cholesterol clearly do not correlate with increased incidence of cardiovascular events in all people. And there's been some great work. A gentleman named Ivor Cummins did a subgroup analysis, a further analysis of the Framingham data, which is a large population-based study from Massachusetts. And if you stratify people,
what years were those studies done? Do you know?
I believe it was 80s.
Yeah, they were ongoing for years. They did them for decades. They just followed this population forever. And they've collected data for decades now, and they just keep pulling out data and looking at it.
They're probably still going in Framingham.
They have Framingham Offspring. They have the kids and the people that originally started.
So it's years and years and decades of data. But if you stratify people, when you look at cardiovascular risk and you stratify people into people who have high HDL and people who have low HDL, the correlation with as LDL goes up is completely different between them. So here I'm contrasting two lipoproteins. There's LDL, which is the thing that we've been told is quote-unquote cholesterol, right?
Bad cholesterol.
Yeah, we've been told it's quote-unquote bad cholesterol. And then there's HDL, which we've been told is quote-unquote good cholesterol. It's an oversimplification. HDL does a lot of things. But if you stratify this large group of people, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of people, decades, we're talking, hundreds of thousands of population years of data, you see that when you stratify those people in terms of people with high HDL and low HDL, it's only the people who have low HDL that have a direct correlation as the LDL rises with an increased incidence of cardiovascular events. And so that HDL, that high HDL versus low HDL, is really a marker for this endothelial dysfunction, this underlying inflammation that we're talking about.
So the best way is to be in balance.
The best way is to be in balance. The best way is to have a healthy endothelium. The best way is to remove inflammation, and that's what we're sort of about. That's what we think is so fascinating about this way of eating, and that's how we get people healthy.
Do you feel like this diet naturally balances that system in your body?
I do, absolutely, which is what's so cool about it and so disruptive, because there's, as Sean has been alluding to, there's so much bad science coming from epidemiology, not actual intervention data, that would suggest, and the main population thinks, oh, meat is bad for meat is inflammatory. Well, when we actually do the intervention studies, it's not at all. People are so misled, and they're not eating this incredibly nutritious food.
What do you think about balancing EFAs? Does that ever become an issue, or what do you guys do personally with that?
Yeah,
as far as that being disrupted with the disruption.
Yeah, I think if you look at, essential fatty acids, people talk about omega-3s, omega-6, the DHA, EPA. That obviously has an impact on us. And I think clearly in the American diet now we get far, far too much omega-6. And that usually comes in the form of seed oils, vegetable oils. If you look at it, if you go to the grocery store and just run through the aisles and look at all the processed foods, it's got 3 ingredients. It's got some kind of refined wheat or grain. It's got some kind of sugar source, and then it's got a vegetable, canola oil, soybean oil. When currently in the United States, we eat more calories in soybean oil than we do in beef, which is shocking if you think about that.
It's amazing.
And
corn
that
also.
That drives this omega-6, omega-3 ratio. And so I think, certainly getting the omega-6 out is probably the most effective thing we can do. And then when we get into, the fine points of how much omega-3, because you don't really need that much, and you need them both. You need omega-6 and omega-3s. The amount is, not quite as much as we think. We think that there's probably an advantage to having a little bit greater omega-3 ratio. There's populations we look at. We can look at people like the Japanese, where they eat a lot of fish, which has a lot of omega-3s. We can look at people like the Inuit, who were, the folks that lived up north that ate, basically, an animal-based diet, but a lot of seafood, and we see better ratios. And that tends to come out with better outcomes. The question is, is it the only thing that matters, or are they doing other things? Because I think there's a little bit. One of the things we see is when people find a new fact. It's like the microbiome. We found a new fact about the microbiome. Now everybody needs to do this, and they always put the cart before the horse. And so I think it's one of those areas where I think, in general, I think, and we all know we don't need to be eating junk food. That's clear. Nobody's going to disagree with that. I think the omega-6 are part of that. I think that when we look at how do I assess health, and it becomes very difficult. But there's some basic things. When you went on a diet and you got leaner, you leaned out a little bit, that is absolutely a positive thing. There's nobody will say having a big gut is helpful. And so I think that's how I kind of look at things. And so these things is likely very beneficial to have favorable omega-3 to omega-6. I would say at this point I think it's likely. I can't say with 100% certainty. I would say with almost 100% certainty that getting the omega-6s and the seed oils out of the diet is almost probably one of the best things you can possibly do. If we think about novel foods that humans were designed to eat, I don't know. I wasn't there 50,000 years ago. I don't have a time machine. I can't fly back there and say they definitely ate a lot of this, but I can say what they didn't eat. They didn't eat Twinkies. They didn't eat Doritos. They weren't eating corn oil. They weren't eating soybean oil. And so those things are not – that is not even human food. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the most important aspect of this.
Do you ever think there's a time when you're like, oh man, I just feel I need to eat a bunch of yams right now, or get some? I mean, is there ever that motion you're like, I've expended a bunch of energy and I just need a quick, easy glucose refeed, and that's a thing that comes up, or does that never cross your mind?
I've been doing it long enough, and I've competed high level athletic activities without doing that. And what I find, and what the data seems to suggest, is one of the problems with the ketogenic diet, the classic ketogenic diet, is
tell me the differences as that would be too, because I get a lot of questions about that.
Right. So I mean, right now we don't know what a ketogenic diet is. It could be anything. It could be Quest bars.
It's like saying a paleo diet.
It could be Quest bars and fat bombs. Right now there's so many products that it makes it hard. But if you assume somebody's on a whole food ketogenic diet, classically when I was doing it, it was a lot of vegetables, a lot of salads. People were talking, I eat more salads than the vegetarians because I'm on a ketogenic diet. And then it would be not a lot of animal fat and not a lot of animal protein. I mean, we would kind of moderate or limit protein. And I think one of the nice things about this diet, I think protein is essential. I think we're demonizing protein right now misguidedly, and I think there's some bad data about that. But I think that one of the things you see with animals is if you eat a high protein diet, their glycogen reserves, particularly overnight, don't drop. They maintain their liver glycogen overnight. If you're on a carb-based diet, your glycogen overnight
is horrible.
Well, as your glycogen overnight, you're basically see your glycogen drop, and then you wake up in the morning. Guess what? You're starving. You got to eat a bowl of cereal.
Your day is like that, and then if you start with cereal and carbs in the morning, then you're on that horrible fucking cycle for the whole day. You can't reset until you sleep again.
Right, and so you can, if you want to, and I've been doing this athletically, and I find that you can refill your glycogen, with enough protein, and I think that's where the leverage becomes. And so you got to eat enough, and that's the difficulty for some people because meat is satiating. I mean, human beings weren't designed to be bodybuilders, right? We weren't, ancient humans weren't running around looking like Stan Efferding or something like that. I mean, they were probably, somewhere around 10%, 12% body fat, probably, just kind of a normal sized person. I think that's normal human physiology. But when you're trying to, go outside of normal physiology, like a fitness model gets down to, 4 or 5% body fat, that's not sustainable anyway. But I mean, or trying to put on, 50 pounds more muscle than you need to carry, then there may be a role for some of these other things. But you can do it with meat. And I mean, I'm 250, so I'm not like a little guy. I've got decent muscle on me. And I mean, I do it by eating, it might be 4, 5, 6 pounds of meat for me to do that, though.
So, a day.
Something,
yeah.
There are also studies that suggest, Finney and Volek did a study called the FASTER study that people can look at, and they compared athletes who are doing mixed diets that are high carb to athletes that are doing ketogenic diets. The issue when we're studying ketogenic athletes and fat-adapted athletes is that a lot of times the studies are done too soon. There's like a fat adaptation phase. You're kind of basically making an unleaded car into a diesel car when you go to a ketogenic state as an athlete. You become a different sort of machine. You become a different engine. But in the FASTER study, once people had become fat-adapted, I think they waited 8 or 12 weeks, they saw equal levels of glycogen storage and replenishment on people on ketogenic diets and people on high carbohydrate diets. So the idea that there's no glycogen stored or there's no glycogen being utilized when you're on a ketogenic state or you're fat adapted doesn't seem to be supported by the literature. So I've not experienced that either. I mean, Sean and I do a little bit different things athletically. Sean has clearly done some really incredible things in the rowing world and lifting world and all that stuff. But I think that once people become fat adapted, your body kind of adjusts and you have the ability to become a completely new engine.
Well, I would say beyond that because I think because I was ketogenic for a while. I mean, for a couple of years, and my performance.
When did you start fucking around with this kind of stuff?
So about 7 years ago, I started playing with diet because I was mid.
Because you were I was
mid-40s, just aging and feeling crappy. My blood pressure was coming up, and I was too fat, and I wasn't sleeping well, and And I just started playing with different diets, and eventually ended up where I'm at now. But when I went from ketogenic to a carnivore diet, I mean, my performance output, and I was already at at least in rowing, I was already breaking the U.S. record on the machine. I went up 8% in wattage, which is a huge increase, and that's an 8% performance increase on somebody that's already at a U.S. world, in a world record level. And so,
what kind of distances are you rowing?
So I was doing 500 meters. So 500 meter, I pulled a 114.
Yeah, that's great.
And that was, and the world record at the time was 118, for my age class. And so, I mean, I was like, and I just got done, I mean, literally a month ago, last month, I competed at the World Championships. And, I won my class by, like a mile. But I was competing with the guys, and they were actually active guys in the Olympics. And I beat a lot of those guys. I almost won the whole thing. And I probably could have. I made a mistake at the beginning, but my physiology was allowing me to do that, and I was very strict. I ate nothing but red meat for 2 months prior to that. Normally I'll have some eggs and some dairy and stuff like that.
Now, why do you stay away from eggs?
I don't necessarily stay. I mean, I find that if I eat a lot of them,
right?
Like I used to when I was on a ketogenic diet, I'd eat 18 a day, 12 a dozen, no problem. Now I find that I do better with them as kind of a compliment, like a side dish. If I eat like a bunch of them, I'll get some gastrointestinal upset, and that's the reason for me.
What about cheese? No.
With dairy in general, I find that I do better with limiting it. I find if I eat more cheese, I put on more weight. Probably because there's a little bit of carbohydrate in there as well. Casomorphin. It makes you want to eat them. But
what's casomorphin?
It's just a compound in dairy that sort of makes you want to eat more. Basically.
Changes your satiety mechanisms, So it's an opiate-like compound in dairy that's derived from casein that can mess with people's satiety mechanisms.
And it sounds like queso, so that draws you in.
Yeah, right.
Well, queso and then morphine. It's like
casein, it's like morphine cheese.
Yeah, exactly.
Opiate cheese
with a side of salty corn chips.
But I mean, again, this is at the end of the day. When we're talking about, because this is very important. And we talk about what's the best thing you could do, and I think we could argue, and Paul and I probably agree about that. But then there's also what can the average person do? What's going to draw people in? If I say, human beings started out as savages eating raw meat. That may be the best diet for human beings. But if I try to say, tell people you got to go eat, hunks of raw meat and a bunch of kidneys raw.
We could also, though, using that argument, we could say, we used to use rocks, and now we have a hammer.
Right.
We can't argue that the rock is bad.
Right. Well, I mean, you can say that, there's obviously technology is improved. Technology has improved the human experience clearly.
Right.
I mean, there are bad things we do. I mean, the fact that we don't get outside, we stay shoved in a cubicle all day and stare at our cell phones.
I mean, it's just interesting. Right. Yeah, we do a lot of things that are bad for us, but it's like we always have this romantic idea about, in those blissful prehistoric times,
right? Sure.
They did it perfect. I bet they didn't.
No, I mean,
everybody's trying to live.
Everybody died, but I mean, again, at the same point, your physiology, your biology doesn't have time to change. 10,000 years, we haven't had a chance to adapt to any significant degree. I mean, we didn't change our anatomy like we did over the maybe 7 million years that we evolved away from, what chimpanzees are doing, living in the trees and eating fruit. And so, clearly, there is some wisdom to be gained from realizing what humans did. But at the same point, you have to say we live in a modern world. We still have to deal with that. And so I think you have to say, so when it comes to diet, you have to pick something that people are going to do. I mean, if it's not palatable,
that they can do.
I
mean, traveling and everything else. It's like, how do I overlay this on my actual life?
Yeah. So if I say like with dairy, and dairy may have a problem for some people. Some people may do okay with that and do fine. I would say if the difference between you eating a crappy diet, like a standard American, you going to eat a package of potato chips, or eating a piece of meat with a piece of cheese on it. I said, put a piece of cheese on there. It's going to make it more palatable.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just a matter of...
And then I think about that all the time when I think about how I grew up. And it's like, I don't know if I've eaten 1,000 or 10,000 Big Macs or whatever, right?
Sure.
And I think about that all the time and think, man, if I'd have, what would it have been if you just ate natural foods or like just heavy, good meat, like just what we didn't know, we had no idea of. It's amazing. It's an amazing deal. How do you feel like, what do you guys want to see? I mean, you guys say you're coming together like the Wonder Twins coming in, like the Voltron powers unite. What's going to happen with, where do you envision the movement going in that way? And what is it that you guys are trying to create?
So I think this is an important aspect because I think there's a health impact. And I think that's very important. We need to be open-minded about how to make human beings healthy. I think that's the number one priority. We have this save the world, save the planet. We got to save humans first because a population of sick people are not going to be good for the planet either. Right. And so we need to figure out what makes people healthy. And so I think there's definitely a use for this type of approach for many, many people. And it may not be for everybody. Maybe most people won't want to do it. Many people will. And then I think we have to go beyond that and incorporate how it's produced. And I think there's a argument for a sustainable, regenerative type of agriculture. Currently, we practice degenerative agriculture, where we destroy the soil, we destroy the land. We have ways we do both plant and animal agriculture that's just messing things up. And so I think we can use animals.
Talk about what that is for listeners, that there's not a closed system farm and that then it just is replete with waste, and then you start to feed animals stuff that animals shouldn't eat. And, there's a death in every system instead of it being a holistic system that works to feed itself.
Yeah, I just got done talking with the guy, and they're doing something called solar grazing, which is kind of interesting. They got all these big solar panels, which we're using this renewable electricity from the sun, but they can't deal with all the plant and weeds under there, so they run sheep under it. Right. And these sheep are completely taken care of, helping the solar, and they're grass finished, and they're completely on grass their whole life. They're eating a natural diet, and then those animals can be used to feed us, which is what they're ultimately what they're.
The interesting thing is they, like you say, where we need to go and this and that. There's no government that's going to get on board with this. You look at what's happened even just with the food pyramid and all the bullshit that goes into it. It's like it's replete with lies for corporate greed goes and shifts those numbers for lies. And it tells people, here's mulligan stew and here's what you should. And it's like, I should have 8 servings of grains a day. That's insane.
It's absolutely insane.
What I know today is you're trying to poison me now.
That's basically it, yeah.
And so what I'm saying is it's like when people argue, I've had, friends of mine that were, against eating animals, and they would talk about this kind of thing, and I would talk about grass-fed meat, or I'd talk about different ways of farming or harvesting animals. They say it's not sustainable for 7 billion people or whatever the deal is, and I'm like, yeah, but nobody wants to quit eating Taco Bell either. There's only me and 4 other people that give a shit about eating really clean, good meats. It's not widespread, and it doesn't taste like chicken nuggets. So people aren't interested. It's there is that too of who are we changing as only people that have a strong desire and a discipline to adhere.
For me, it's you can't. For me, it's just such a powerful tool for people to change the course of their life from a quality of life standpoint. You can't kill that discussion before it's even getting going.
Especially if you feel powerless about what you eat. And I used to feel like I'm going to get to the bottom of this bag if I start. I knew that carbohydrates were going to treat me like that. And so this kind of dieting is so interesting to me because I'm trying to save my own life. And how do I even own myself so I can control my own desires? Because food, until Rob Wolf, he goes, hey man, I want you to consider that food's maybe the most powerful drug you put in your body.
Absolutely.
You don't know my history, but at the same time, it's how true is that? I never thought about it as a powerful pusher on me consciously, emotionally, and then I'm it has to do. It's replete. Well, it's everything.
It's huge. You think about it. If we made heroin legal, and we had it in every store, and it was TV commercials about it, and everybody told you it was good, and they gave it to you as a treat for being good in school,
right?
We'd everybody be heroin addicts, right? Everybody would be, right? We have the same thing. We do that with sugar. We do it with some of these other, little treat foods, and we slowly do it. We start out babies.
Yeah.
We start giving them sugar. If we look at the formula, the formula is corn oil and sugar.
It's horrible.
And
my friend's starting a company right now with grass-fed animals into baby food and purees and all that stuff, and they just launched this thing a year ago, but they said in the marketplace, they're talking about the ratios of macronutrients within baby food. There's not one that isn't high fructose corn syrup. It's all sugar, which we know babies don't need, but they get sicker as they grow with it. Right. And that's the biggest component of every fucking baby food out there.
Yeah, but back to your point about how do you make a difference? And so you're right. I don't think the government's going to get on board certainly not an animal food-based diet, but as a grassroots movement, podcasts like these, and then probably working with corporations, because there are corporations that want to save money, and so if you can get their employees healthy, you go in there and you go to Ford or IBM,
right?
You're not going to General Mills, you're not going to Pfizer, but you're going to people that don't have a competing interest with what they produce. Then you have an impact, and you can say, hey guys, we can take your employees, we can take your 20,000 employees, get them off medications. They're not going to have as many sick days. They're going to be more productive. You are going to be a more successful organization. I think that's one place you can look.
Can you imagine how much money that would save?
Well,
people would be so healthy. It's just crazy. You look at what causes loss of morbidity, loss of productivity. You look at what contributes to morbidity in this country, and the number one thing is actually depression and anxiety, which is interesting for me from a mental health standpoint. But we see incredible improvements on animal-based diets with depression and anxiety, which is just so shocking to people. Mm-hmm. It's clearly that those are autoimmune issues and inflammatory issues. But in terms of diabetes, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, as we're talking about, this endothelial dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, these are diseases that are 100% fixable.
Right.
Type 2 diabetes is 100% fixable.
Don't you have to look at if this you save money on one. Where are you taking money out of somebody's hand?
Oh, absolutely.
And to me, it's like the oil and gas company. It's like, yeah, they're not going to let electric cars happen. I mean, they've suppressed that for now 80, 90 years, right, since the inception of the idea. So at a certain point, these corporations can actually halt what healthy evolution would look like, which I would suggest this might be that, but I feel like there's so much at stake for people to suppress that it's like it's almost like to me like this pirate life radio is like this idea of like there's this overarching enemy in a way that's trying to keep us mollified to a certain degree, and you really have to sift through the information with all the federal guidelines and bullshit that's out there that's just not so. And so then you have to kind of find your own truths like this and that, and I feel like it's a rebellious act in itself.
It's pretty rebellious,
right? And so I don't know that it'll ever be more than grassroots or that it needs to be, but it's sure as fuck nice that there's a conversation that's free and easy that can be out in the air for people.
And people can't suppress this. And what's amazing is that, there's meatheals.com, which is a website that Sean maintains.
Meatheals?
Meatheals.com.
Cool, man.
People can just go there and see, and people can look at our social media platforms and see there are thousands of people finding incredible improvements in health with this. Like, this is not something that is going to be able to be suppressed.
Right.
As soon as we put it out there, it's just going to grow up on its own, And it's all it takes is people to say, oh, maybe these guys aren't completely kooky. Maybe what they're talking about makes some sense evolutionarily, and they try it. Boom. It's incredible what happens. People find these just life-changing improvements in health and mental clarity like you did. I mean, the things that you experienced were pretty striking. How can you not tell people about that?
Of course.
And so that I think is going to be the brush fire that's going to start. And it's already going now.
What I've found with it is that, you tell people that stuff, and most people go, I eat pretty good. I mean, people don't really even know what pretty good means when they say stuff like that. And then, it's a small percentage of the population that has the kind of disciplines to exact that, because food is a real emotional topic for most folks, and most folks know stuff in their mind, like whether they do or not, they have information that they're willing to stake their lives on, which is fucking crazy. I mean, I guess you don't think you're staking your life on it when you're just eating, but that's what it is, right? It's a decision either towards health or towards illness, every bite that we take.
It's a big thing for people. I mean, I think there are a lot of challenges wrapped up in health food behaviors and why we choose the foods we do, and what Sean is alluding to. Most of the foods that people eat are incredibly addictive, and they fuel things for people, and they're probably connected with previous traumas or things, and so it's a hard way to get out, and it's hard for people to get out of that position and start to kind of claw their way out. But I think, like we were talking about earlier, once people really begin a simplified diet, and in our opinions, a diet that's so evolutionarily consistent, that's so really congruent with what the human organism at a biochemical level wants to eat, they get such an increased ability to discern what's good for them and what's bad for them and what's making them feel certain ways that they start to be able to kind of make that step and say, you know what, I ate that donut, I felt like shit.
Right.
And then they start to get the reinforcement.
You're clear of donuts for long enough,
you can't
don't feel like you don't have any idea. You
don't get
feel
the feedback.
You
don't get you just know you feel meh.
Right.
5.5 out of 10 all the time.
Yeah, and I just kind of am a low energy guy.
Yeah.
Or whatever you're thinking.
And you don't know that it's this conglomerate, this total.
So do you think it's because it's easier for sure to be like, okay, everything with a face, like meat, eggs, like whatever. But then you start adding in so I'll eat eggs, tomatillo, I'll mix with it, cheese, and ribeyes, and then, so that now we're talking about a ketogenic diet as opposed to a carnivore diet, right?
Well, I mean,
and so what therein are the differences or maladies that may come up from one or the other? You know what I mean?
So I've been doing this for a few years, and I just gave a lecture at this at Paleo Effects, and I said, my sort of definition of a carnivore diet at this point is a diet that focuses on nutrient-dense, animal-based food that seeks to eliminate or limit plant foods as needed for health. And so that's why I think you look at that. Now, for many people, particularly when we talk about the addictive nature, it's hard to quit drinking alcohol if I tell you to drink two drinks a week, right? You've got to go pure for a period of time. You got to figure these out. And it's like if you've got health issues, and we're playing a game of Clue, right? And you got Colonel Mustard, and you got Mrs. Green, and Mr. Peacock or whoever, and you got 100 characters on the board, and you're trying to figure out who done it. It's pretty hard. When you narrow it down, you're just eating a bunch of meat and water, and you got maybe one other thing. You can quickly figure out where your problems are. But I mean, like what you're saying, I wouldn't consider that you're eating steak and eggs, a little bit of cheese, and a little bit of spice. To me, that's still essentially the spirit.
That's how
of
I colored myself. I'm kind of in that realm.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you're making it doable. But I mean, the thing is, you've changed your relationship with food.
To be honest with you guys.
Right? No, I think that's right. But I mean, if you change your relationship, you fundamentally change your relationship with food, and you understand where your nutrition is coming from, and nutrition, human nutrition, is coming from animal-based products, and then you realize that I don't need to eat that box of cookies, or I don't need to eat tomatoes for my health.
That shit is like endless too. I start the box of cookies, and it's like, when are you full? Never. When do you run out of boxes of cookies?
Right. You can continue to eat.
But you don't do that with pork chops.
Right.
Well, you know what I mean? That sates you.
I mean, you're a big guy. I'm a big guy because you get that way because you like to eat. Right. I mean, I could sit there and eat a gallon of ice cream or something like that. You just don't want to stop.
My friend Nate Harris, he's like, I don't ever get full.
Yeah.
I just get bored with what I'm eating, and then I'm bored with eating steak. I'll move on to chicken. I'm bored with eating chicken. I'm like, and he's literally empty, just bottomless that way.
Yeah. There's people that do that for sure. Yeah. But I think the nice thing about what I found remarkable, in contrast to the ketogenic diet, because the ketogenic diet, people are always. When I was on a ketogenic diet, I was excited about some of the health benefits, but I was always looking at the recipe books. I'm going to make this keto cheesecake, or I'm going to make this keto fat
stupid. It pisses me off.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you trying to have donuts and pretend you're...
Right.
Motherfuck you.
Just have the real one,
That's deceptive, it's muddy, and you're confusing people.
No,
Stop
absolutely.
it.
But then with a carnivore diet, you can't do that. A carnivore diet, you're just like, I don't have these fake foods, and I get rid of these cravings. And the interesting thing, and I've seen, which I think is really remarkable, is people go on a diet, carnivore diet, and they give up these food addictions. But guess what also happens? They don't want to drink all the time. They don't want to smoke. They stop smoking. They stop drinking. They stop doing different drugs.
You stop being compulsory.
Right. And so I think it changes your brain. That this constant hits as you get from a regular diet, a high carb or sugar-based diet. You're constantly stimulating these sort of addiction centers. And when you stop doing that on a day-to-day basis with your diet, guess what? Then your body's like, maybe I don't need to be, doing this other stuff.
Yeah,
that's pretty remarkable.
It's pretty incredible. I've seen it too. It's pretty incredible, and I think there's a lot of power in the simplicity of eating this way. And Sean and I would construct a carnivore diet a little differently. Like I think about stuff from kind of a nose to tail perspective. I'm excited about things like liver and connective tissue and trying to eat, get those nutrients. I think for a lot of people when they're starting out on a carnivore diet, it can be great to just simplify it and not overcomplicate it. I appreciate Sean's perspective on that with just the muscle meat. I think a lot of people can do really well with that. I'm kind of a nutrition geek, so I'm interested in understanding, are there potential added benefits to adding things like liver and, egg yolks or connective tissue or brain or collagen or bone marrow, things like that. But no matter how you construct it, I think we would completely agree, Sean and I, that an animal-based nutrition is highly superior. And when people cut out the plants and they're not doing these keto cheesecakes and stuff, it's so much easier to stop your cravings. People say they have so many fewer cravings. There's so much less cheating, quote unquote.
It's addictees.
Yeah.
In that way. I'm trying to be rigorously disciplined here. And to feel like I'm in line while I'm going off center it's like I said, it's confusing, I think, to my own body in that way. It does me a lot more favors if I stay the course. And if I'm going to go off, fuck it, have ice cream sundae and watch movies all night or whatever the thing is and make that a thing. And also I like that because it's like, it makes me also feel the consequence the next day, which it's like, I'm not trying to live consequence free if I misstep. I want to fucking feel that.
Yeah, you'll feel it, right?
It's a good fucking tick in my head to go, okay, yeah, you did that and there's a cost. Because this idea that we're going through life and it's fucking free, that there's no cost, it's like, man, you better be clear that every action we take there's a cost to that. It might look, everything has a cost. And I think this thing about diet and we feel like, oh, I got a freebie because it says gluten-free on the thing or whatever the thing. I had a vegan cookie. Holy fuck. I never had a sweeter thing in my life. And I was like, no wonder y'all look like that and you're kind of tired because maybe that was just the way I felt. Maybe if I ate vegan cookies every day, I would be fucking really superior.
I doubt it.
But it's not happening because I can't take the first couple of days of how it feels.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, if you look at just the content of an animal-based diet, like we're saying, it's so nutrient-rich. The nutrients are so bioavailable. There's no comparison with plant stuff. And I think it's pretty clear that it's the optimal human diet in that respect. And the more people eat of that, the better they're going to feel.
Interesting.
I've kind of constructed
You think no matter how long they eat it for?
What do you mean?
Like, I've been on it 6 years. I'm not going to have or you know what I mean? Like if somebody stays true to that line, you think there's no other nutrients that they can gain all their nourishment just simply from meat.
Oh, absolutely.
And that their body never has any biometric that is a downtick from that.
No. That's exactly what I think both Sean and I agree
you can
on.
Get every single nutrient you need. From
now, agreeing on it and having people that have done the data, is that on the way of people that you're like, how rigorous they've been in their diets, and you have testing that's, 2 years, 5 years, 18 years.
Yeah, that's coming. We've got people that have been pretty rigorous about very detailed testing, and they're showing really no real deficiencies. And there's people doing this for 20 years. I mean, there are people that nothing but meat for 20 years, and they're.
How long did the guy in the Grateful Dead? 40 years?
He did
50,
for 53 years.
53 years.
53 years before he died in a car accident.
Yeah.
So the guy, his name was Owsley Stanley, and he was like an LSD manufacturer in the '60s. Worked as a sound man for the Grateful Dead.
Just trying to get work.
And he went to prison for that, and then but he did,
right,
but he was a big guy with the Grateful Dead, and he was on an all meat diet for 53 years.
Interesting.
And then he died like at 77 in a car wreck. And so,
if you were to ask me what's a Grateful Dead fan eat, I would not say all meat. I would think that it would be a different way, but
like
God
Jerry
bless,
Garcia,
bless
I don't know, yeah, potato chips or something. No.
But if we look at it, I mean, I've been doing it for 8 months straight, and because I'm super geeky about it, I've done so much blood work on myself. I mean, I can, when you're a doctor, you can just order it like that.
Right.
And so I've probably done 350 different lab studies on myself in 8 months, and I can interpret them, and you see the lowest inflammatory markers I've ever seen in myself, no nutrient deficiencies. Then if you just back up and sort of deconstruct it on first principles, what Sean is saying is completely true. Like, everything a human needs to function optimally from a nutritional science perspective is in an animal. It's all in there.
Well, I mean, because other animals are all monodimensional in how they eat. Well, they don't vary a whole lot. Cows eat this, monkeys eat this.
Right.
Like, it's not like
a lion doesn't have nutritional deficiencies. They just eat the gazelle.
Well, I mean, you think about what do you need to run your muscle cells? What nutrients do you need? Right? You need them all, right? And guess where they're at? They're in your muscle cells. I mean, there's vitamin A in your muscle cells. There's vitamin E. There's vitamin D. There's vitamin K. There's vitamin C. There's magnesium. There's calcium. Your muscle can't contract without calcium. So, I mean, it's in there in some quantity. So, when I was cutting people open as a surgeon, people are red meat. People are red meat animals. Mm-hmm. And we evolved. Think about we go back 50,000 years ago, and I give you and me a spear. And what are we going to eat? And there's these big, fat, slow-moving animals that don't run away. They don't run away. Or there's some birds that are hard to kill, or there's some fast antelope or something like that. Or, there might be, maybe there's some leaves that taste really bitter and have no calories. What are you going to choose? What's going to, I would say let's kill this big animal, be done for the day, have a big bonfire, and we're going to eat for the next 2 months. And that's what humans clearly did. Going back to Homo erectus, which is on the planet for 1.8 million years, they're more successful than Homo sapiens. They preceded us. They figured it out. Their brain went from 800 cc's to 1,200 cc's, which is almost the same size of a human brain today. In fact, the human brain, starting around maybe 50,000 years ago to 25,000 years ago, started to shrink because all these big animals died. We killed them all. We ate them all. And we lost about 200 cc's of brain size. We went down. After we started agriculture, humans shrunk by 6 inches. Our bones got weaker, our muscles got smaller, and our brain shrunk. And so that's from eating a plant-heavy diet. When we used to eat a nutrient-dense, fat-dense, animal-based diet.
What about that they attribute a lot of the brain growth to mushrooms and did the expansion of consciousness?
I don't think so.
That's the stoned ape theory.
A lot of people talk about it, Sean. I'm just saying.
I don't think there's really. I think the evidence is clearly in the favor of meat developing the brain because, I mean, like I said, Homo erectus gained 400 cc's, which is the largest amount of.
If that were the only marker, though, we would think lions would be a lot smarter.
Well, no, it's with it. No, but carnivore.
There's not pops like that with other animals.
But when you look within species types, carnivore animals per body size are smarter than herbivores. They have more brain.
Well, they're more. They need to be.
Yeah, they need to because they're
necessity, right?
And humans did the same thing. And in fact, Neanderthals actually had bigger brains than Homo sapiens, which is a lot of people don't know. They got at around something up to like a 1,700 cc brain, and arguably
it's a big brain on grog.
Yeah, exactly. They got big brain. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
I think there's all sorts of interesting theories about why humans became the best hunters on the planet, and why we became sort of the dominant species on the planet. And that's that book Sapiens, and I think that's an interesting comparison you draw with the lions. And it's a fascinating thing. Why didn't lions evolve into humans? And who knows? But
there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, there was this incredible transition, but I mean, there's this really unique transition that has happened in our evolution, and I don't think this has really happened in any other animal evolution in the last 5 million years. But if you look at it, we came from primates. Like, this entirely new species came out of nowhere and ruled the earth, from nothing. It wasn't like the lions took over. It was the humans who evolved from primates, who evolved from Australopithecus. And I think that there's incredibly strong data to support the fact that was because we were eating animals. We became the dominant species on this planet because we started eating animals in that way. That's something about our prehistoric. Maybe we started with like some dexterity and some intelligence as primates, and then you put primates and you give them meat and they become the most dominant species on the planet. It's pretty clear that it was the animal foods that contributed to that, whether it was the DHA, like you were suggesting, the essential fatty acids.
I feel like we needed some defense, right? You either need to be thicker skinned, claws, teeth, none of which we have, or else you need to outthink.
You need brain.
Yeah, our brain. Our brain was our biggest weapon.
That's the thing, right?
I mean, you think about it. We are the ultimate predator. I mean, there's no other animal on the planet that has eaten whales, that has eaten lions, that has eaten monkeys. It's
apex predator.
I mean, lions do not eat whales, and sharks do not eat cows, but humans do. We've figured it all out. We've exploited and eaten every animal that's ever existed. Now, not that we're advocating we should be eating all the elephants, which we did. We killed off all the elephants almost. Everything. It's interesting. If you look at, this is an interesting fact about animal evolution. So if we looked at about at the beginning of the Pleistocene, which is about 125,000 years ago, the average size of a mammal was somewhere 500 to 700 kilograms, so 1,500 pounds, right? Yeah. That's the average size. Today in North America, the average size of a mammal is 7 kilograms, 15 pounds. That's average. And the reason that occurred is because we selectively went for all these big animals, and we were so effective at doing that. And we ate it and ate it and ate it until we ran out. And there's some evidence that maybe some cosmic impact killed some of them. But generally, if you look at what happened when humans got to Australia 50,000 years ago, a few thousand years later, all the megafauna went away. You can look at the same thing in South America. You can see that through across Asia and Europe. And in Africa, because we co-evolved with those animals, those elephants there were a little smarter because they were used to humans. But as soon as humans got out, all these big animals are like, well, that's a little guy. I'm not going to worry about him. You're a little guy. What are you going to do to me? It's like a jiu-jitsu guy that knows his stuff. Right. He's playing against a bigger opponent. Yeah. He's got spears, and the elephants aren't expecting it, and they're easy targets, and they were everywhere. So it was just so a perfect, relationship, and that's what we selected.
Yeah, man. I feel like the dominance of us is an interesting thing. I also think like the idea of this global communication that happens. I remember when I was a kid and we would always hunt white-tailed deer, and then when I was maybe 14 or something, they opened up elk permits in Michigan, and so you could draw elk tags. Before then, we would drive up, and there'd be a herd of 300 elk. They'd have sentries. The younger bulls would be stationed around and all that. And you could damn near walk up to them as if you would a cow. They were just, and the 1 year they hunted, they opened up the tags. You didn't see elk again. They were as skittish as deer after that. It was almost like a communal agreement of like, okay, things changed, and they all see that. And I see that, and you see it how fish move or how a flock of birds will all turn at the same moment, and that kind of a communication. I think that goes on with plants all the time. And you look at the way plants have been useful to us as medicine in that way. And there's like when you talk about how they attack you when you ingest them in different ways, right? It's like, how do you figure that people ever figured out grind up the leaves and drink it as a tea? It'll calm your stomach. But if you grind up the roots and you shoot the monkey, he paralyzes and falls out of the tree. It's like, that's some crazy cause and effect over fucking years. And like, there's tribes that are using medicines like this all the time. And how do you figure that knowledge came about?
Well, you think about it. I mean, what other job did they have? They had a lot of time on their hands. that was it. Survive. Figure out your environment. Right? And we were probably smart. We probably were smarter, quite honestly, we had larger frontal lobes. We probably had higher processing because we needed it. We needed to be sharper. For me and you to survive today in society, I got to call out for a pizza. I mean, then you had to use your wits all the time to not only not get eaten, but to figure out what you had to eat. So it required more intelligence. And so now we're kind of like these kind of semi-retarded humans that we've lost.
And it's searching for communication, probably. It's like now we're distracted everywhere, whether it's whether it's phones or whether it's whatever it is, books even. But like there, it's like you're sitting in the forest. It's like the trees are your friends. You're getting a different communication with different entities in a way. I think that probably happened. There was probably some mass intercommunication that was going on when we were when we had quieter vibrations, maybe.
And I think there was so much ancestral wisdom that's been lost. This is kind of the idea of like the human user
passing on.
Yeah, the human user manual. I mean, like Sean is saying, humans have been on the planet 3 million, depending what species we're saying is human, for millions and millions of years. Homo sapiens has been around for 300,000 years, something like that, 350,000 years. Homo erectus, 1.8 million years. You got to think like this is generation after generation of traditional knowledge, what to eat, how to eat, what plants to use to kill the monkey, what plant to use if you get an infection on your skin. Like that user manual for being a human, we lost that, and we've lost all that ancestral wisdom. And I think that both Sean and I would suggest strongly that written in that user manual was a chapter that said, what the fuck to eat? And it said, go hunt an animal, dummy.
Well, no, if you look at the cave paintings, like in Lascaux, France, where they've got, that's a menu. In my view, that's like the menu. That's a restaurant. That's on the menu, right? Exactly. Yeah. No, I think that's what it is.
We knew how to do it, and like Sean has alluded to, if you look at these nitrogen studies, looking at the collagenous tissue of Neanderthals and early humans 70, 80,000 years ago, you see bioaccumulation of nitrogen in the collagen, meaning that as someone moves up the trophic chain, if you eat an animal that's higher on the trophic chain, a bigger animal, or an animal versus a plant, you're going to increase the amount of nitrogen in your collagenous tissue. And they can look at the collagen, they can look at the connective tissue, the bones of these Neanderthals, and they can tell how much nitrogen is in there.
Interesting.
It's the D15 isotope. And what they see is that those Neanderthals and those early humans living at the same time, 80,000 years ago, had so much nitrogen in their bones that they were higher than other known carnivores, hyenas, things living in caves. And so it's suggesting like they were eating an almost entirely animal-based diet using bigger animals than the hyena, So it's such an interesting idea. That, in my opinion, is what's in the user manual that we lost.
Well, I mean,
cave paintings, and indication too.
That's very solid science. I think the Max Planck Institute out of Germany is doing a lot of that research. But
what's his name?
Well, Max Planck. He was a scientist from the early 1900s, a German guy, but
he's dead now.
He's dead now. Yeah, but
he's been eating carnivore. He's still alive. He's doing great.
Yeah. He ate carnivore.
Just ran a marathon last week.
But I mean,
in New York.
It's 212.
The thought. But then people say, well, they found a dental scraping where they saw some plant fibers in there. But it's kind of funny. Like, I think the cave where they found there, that they also saw evidence of cannibalism. So which means
that's what I wanted to ask too. Yeah, are they healthier?
Well, they might be. I don't know. I'm not. That's going to be a little harder to sell, that book.
You say you like liver.
Diet.
What about human liver?
Exactly. Yeah. Get the little Hannibal Lecter thing going there. Fava beans, right? Gotta have that.
There's an interesting parallel here. The idea that an animal is much more like a human than a mustard plant or a piece of kale, right? I mean, that's intuitive,
Sure.
You're going to eat I don't care if it's a dog, a horse, or a cow, or an antelope, or a deer, or an elephant. That's a mammal. That is so much more similar to a human than a plant, than a bean in terms of their biochemistry. And they have muscles. Their muscles contract with actin and myosin filaments. They have a folate cycle. They have many of the same enzymes. We're incredibly homologous to them. So you're eating out of the same operating system that you're in. The information is so much more compatible with what you get as a human.
It's less confusing to your whole
system.
I mean,
like if I were to say I need to build a car, and I got a pile of car parts, right? And then I got a pile of scrap that's got like some nails in it. It's the only metal. And I'm going to say, you need to build a car.
Yeah.
Well, you could go to the pile of scrap and pull all the metal out of there and melt it down and get enough of it and then maybe build a car. But it'd be much quicker if I just had a bunch of car parts, doors and windows, and I put those together. And that's the difference between getting your nutrition from animal nutrition. And by the way, in that pile of scrap, there's a few little booby traps, little bombs that go off that mess you up too. So it's like, what are you going to choose?
And it's clearly going to make a shittier car with the scrap metal. You're not going to make a Tesla, or whatever car you think. You're not going to make a Porsche out of scrap metal. I mean, it's and I think this is an interesting concept that I mean, part of my hypothesis is this idea that like you could draw a line, I mean, for people that are listening or not watching, you could draw a line from left to right. At the bottom is 0, at the top is awesome, and the line kind of goes up and to the right. And the more animal products you eat, you're getting more nutrient dense food. The more nutrition that you put in your body, the further you're going to move up that line toward awesome. And you can decide where you want to be, but and everybody's line has a little bit different slope, and everybody has a different ability to get, more or less awesome, Michael Phelps, his line is amazing, and he's going to be super awesome up here. Mine is much below his, but I still have an ability. And I really think there's this interesting direct relationship to number one, the quality of our diet, which would be the first postulate, and then, the quality of our nutrition. And then if we believe that animal products are the best nutrition, you can directly influence where you move along that line. The more animal products you eat, the more nutrient-dense animal foods you eat, presumably, hopefully, the best quality animal products you can, not processed, whatever. You're going to move up that line directly, so you can move more toward awesome the more you eat those products. You're going to make the car so much better. You get the better car parts.
If that's true. I feel like I feel like it's a weird thing, coming from my background, I'd watch guys, and I know how I am with a heavy carbohydrate diet, and it's not great. I don't like any of it. And but then I see other guys that I would compete with, and fucking shredded all year long, strong, able, that it's like basically ho-hos and gummy bears or whatever all the fucking time.
But how are they going to look if they eat animals?
I have
Even better.
I have no idea.
Even more of a monster.
There is that. So this idea about like some people feed on this and they do really well. Some people feed on this and do is the.
Yeah, no, I think there is obviously we all have some genetic predisposition. Like I'm taller than Paul. Right. We all have different.
There's guys that no matter what they eat, they're ripped.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
I mean, but I mean,
their line is here and my line is here, right? So does that make sense? They have more genetic gifts, right?
Right. Okay.
But they can eat Twinkies and be here on their line, and I got to eat a carnivore diet to be here. So if they eat Twinkies and I eat carnivore, maybe I can compete. Does that make sense? I'm kind of this is the scientist in me overcomplicating it, but But if
I feel like that should be your Instagram. It's like adding a new dad.
There you go.
Fuck up the kids.
The salad.
Nice. The dance move.
But the idea is like, look, like this guy has incredible genetics, right? This is Michael Phelps. These are the guys in the gym. Here's mine. I'm pretty average. Yeah. Well, if I want to get to my awesome, it's here. But my awesome is only as good as this guy's like mediocre,
or
right?
Whatever, yeah.
And so my hypothesis, I think Sean's too, would be, hey, look, if this guy that has this genetics, he's going to move up the line. But ultimately, I'm never going to jump lines until we get CRISPR. Or, I'm never going to be able to jump lines. I'm never going to be able to move up, that I'm never going to be able to move to this line unless we get genetic engineering. But
that's why it's so tough comparing people. You
got to compare yourself.
There's so many factors.
Yeah, because listen, I've seen so many now, since I've been doing it, like people who are on a plant-based diet are ex-vegans, and they're like, it's night and day. Even guys that
I can't imagine.
Even guys that you'd look at. We had a guy named Bobby Risto who's an ex-vegan. He looked pretty jacked. He was a solid, muscular dude, and he said, "Man, I just finally couldn't do it because my health sucked. Even though I was strong and muscular looking, he went animal-based. And it was like night and day. I'm so much stronger. My recovery's better. It's even these people that you would think they're genetically, doing well. Once they put animal products in their diet,
I also think they're on drugs."
And they use drugs, of course. Yeah, obviously drugs are part of sports drugs.
Right. Even with drugs, you don't see very many, or if any, I don't know what the numbers are, vegans or vegetarians on a podium. Like at high levels of sport,
you just don't see that. It's like they talk about there's some bodybuilders, but those guys, they're genetically gifted, but they're like physique competitors. They're not like bodybuilders, like jack guys that are like Mr. Olympia. You just don't see that. It's not going to happen. Whether Mr. Olympia is the healthiest thing.
And not that that's necessary. Nobody's trying to walk that road.
Nobody's saying that. Right, that is. But we've seen just to go into your world. I've got a gal, world jiu-jitsu champion on carnivore diet, and she's doing jiu-jitsu. Her name's Sarah Thackeray. She's out of Canada. But cool. We've got a guy on the men's Olympic rowing team, fastest guy on the team right now, the carnivore diet. I got an Olympic shot putter that's doing. These people are just trying this out, and they're finding good things athletically. So I think it's exciting to see.
That's what I find the best thing is like I started out and I first got exposed to like a rigorous diet when I needed to make weight for the Mundials in Brazil, and so I tried an Atkins diet, which was basic. When I look back, everything that I felt best doing kind of was tickling the beginnings of all these other keto and carnivore and all that. So that was the first time I felt like, I'm in control of what I'm doing here. And then after that I went into a zone diet, and I tried that for 30, 60 days and see what that was like. And then I started a strict paleo diet, and I was like, oh, fuck, pineapple and dates, awesome. And then I was like, fatter than I wanted to be. And then I was like, okay, maybe that's,
you get cavities.
So you get all those kinds of deals. And then I've fallen into this kind of thing about being ketogenic. And it's kind of where, Caveman Coffee started, kind of based on a dietary whim. We got really superstitious about our weight. So you'd cut weight, you want to do it a certain way. So stepping out of diets as a competitor wasn't doing it. Like nobody would, because there's too much at stake. If you cut weight wrong and then you've got no wind or energy, and I mean, it's just like you're afraid to go out of the lines. And superstition is really what ruled my mind in those days, and Keith too in that way. But we started really, messing around with butter and MCT, and we also started doing that for better brain health from damaging concussions and things like that. And I feel like it's made a huge impact on our lives anyway, and it's kind of steered us toward health. So as we're trying to reach towards higher health, like it's kind of where I've come naturally too with my diet, which that's what I would suggest anybody do, is like have some goddamn gumption and discipline and stick to these different things, because everybody's got so much to say about everything, and it's just palaver if you're just listening to a podcast or reading articles. But to really put yourself into it, man, and go, is this something that fits for me? Because for me, I found it just really useful. I mean, my preferential way to eat and be with life, my relationship with food is now in a healthier way than I think it's ever been.
Yeah, I think one of the most damaging concepts out there is this idea of balance and moderation, because people use that as an excuse to not make a change, because what does that even mean? I mean, I can eat.
That's what I think about flexible dieting. I'm like, I don't even know what you're saying.
Well, I mean, there's people like that because they have freedom to do these different things. But I think at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. You have to stick with it. You have to carry it out. You have to do that. And to make a big change, you have to make a big change in a lot of cases. Yeah. And most people, and they tell people, well, baby steps, go, walk, and that's all the information they get. And I'm like, you've got to really do something. You have to have the intent to do something. You have to
I'm
do
an
it.
alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I don't drink.
Right. Sure.
And I don't ever drink.
Yeah.
And if I drink, all I'm doing is drinking.
Right.
And that's my history, right? And so, like, this idea about, like, oh, well, just take it easy and see how it feels. No, motherfucker, you got to jump in the fucking water if you want to get wet. If wet is what you're after, you got to submerge yourself. That's my feeling with it. Otherwise, you're getting faulty data back.
And the problem is sort of that every human on the planet is a donut-aholic, Like, we're kind of programmed to eat shitty food.
It's easy. It's everywhere. It's oblivion. Cheap. It's like carbohydrates. The worst foods for you are the foods that the poorest people eat, generally. Like in America anyway, I mean, under this structure.
I mean, people can look at alcohol and say some people have more or less, predisposition to drink it. Right. But I mean, like, as human beings, we are programmed to like the combination of sugar and fat together, like nothing else. And so there's really very few humans on the planet that are immune from that addiction. So
you think we're programmed or trained?
Programmed. Huh. Because it's part of our biology in a way. If you look at milk and mother's milk, that's like the only food that exists in nature that has carbohydrate and fat together, and it is uniquely fattening, and the animal gets it right when it's a baby, and the baby goes, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had. And then we stop breastfeeding, and we never get that again until somebody makes a donut or, a McFlurry or something like that. And you look at the foods that are uniquely junk foods, the majority of them have sugar and fat together. That combination doesn't occur in nature other than breast milk. Mm-hmm. It's, a Mars bar, a Snickers bar, Cheetos, right. Or, they're carbohydrate. Not necessarily sugar, but they're carbohydrate and fat and salt. And so there's these uniquely palatable foods that short-circuit our biology in the same way that alcohol does for some people. And I think that we as a society just need to realize, like, hey, food is addictive,
Of course, man.
And it shouldn't be okay, Like, we need to let people know, like, hey, food is addictive. Like, it's like Sean is saying. I mean, it's legal to sell a Big Mac, and probably the bread. Right, the bread is probably the worst part of the Big Mac by far. But I should say it's legal to sell a McFlurry. It's legal to sell.
I would put a caveat on that.
Yeah,
it's legal to sell in the United States, but a Pop-Tart in France contains different shit than the Pop-Tart that were sold in America. And we're over here going rah rah USA, Meanwhile, the companies that really run our government are fucking steadily poisoning us in a way that France's government will not allow them to do, so they make the fucking Pop-Tart different.
That's interesting.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like there's that too. Like, we have different foods in different parts of the country because the governments give a fuck in different parts of the country or different parts of the world about their populace.
And they realize how powerful that combination is. I mean, if you look at those junk foods, they're all the same, but people don't think about food as an addiction in the same way.
Well, it's interesting. Like, speaking of France,
unless they use it as an excuse,
right?
I'm addicted. Unless they're fucking sloppy everywhere in their life.
My girlfriend's French, and we go to France not unfrequently. And when I've seen the TV shows there, and they'll have like a junk food commercial come on, but at the bottom of the screen they'll say this is junk food basically, and they don't have
almost like a cigarette warning.
Yeah, exactly, and they don't have drug commercials like we see every. You watch. I really want to see. Whenever I watch it, I'm always impressed by every commercial break, there's one or two like, do you have GERD? Do you have psoriasis?
I never watch TV unless I'm traveling.
Yeah, exactly.
And I had a TV on last night. It's infrequent. And 3 out of 4 ads were drug commercials.
Right. Isn't that scary?
For stuff I'd never heard of.
Right, yeah, they're making it, they're trying to normalize. They try to normalize illness. Oh, it's they
do try to normalize it because they say, hey, this cure.
Yeah.
Incumbent with this cure is all this other illness that may come in suicide and diarrhea too.
Yeah.
And so it tries to mute our idea of whether that's important. They go, oh, we'll take all that. We'll accept it all.
But it's not even a cure. It's how to manage your symptoms. And that's a problem with medicine in general. We've gone from let's try to make people healthy, let's not have them be diseased, to disease management. How do I manage your diabetes? Your diabetes, you got it for life. You got diabetes, it's a life sentence. Get used to it. Take more and more drugs.
My homeboy started doing it. He got it later in life, 50 years old, type 2 diabetes, whatever. And I go, hey, check it out, man. I can show you a way to eat where you don't have to take insulin anymore.
Right.
And he was like, no, man, I don't drink, I don't smoke, it's my last pleasure, and in he's got lean pockets and shit in his freezer, and he's like, I just love the way I eat, and I don't want to, I'm like, dude, I'm a guy that loves food, and I'm telling you, like, I can cure this thing that's an illness with the way you, and people are just not willing.
Well, the problem is,
even under that yoke, I have to inject myself.
But with your buddy, I mean, if he's a dude, you say, freaking ribeye steak, dude.
Yeah.
That'll hook people in.
I say hollandaise sauce.
Yeah.
I mean, you can eat hollandaise sauce with a straw all day long, and your diabetes will go away. Which sounds insane. You might get other issues. But it's goddamn delicious.
As long as it doesn't have vegetable oil in it, you'd probably be okay. Hollandaise without vegetable oil.
Where can folks find you guys?
So they can find me. I'm on Instagram, Sean Baker, 1967, SHAWNBAKER.
Is every post on Instagram, the overtone of it is fuck vegans?
Not everyone. Everybody. It's just probably.
I looked at that and I was like, this guy is mad at vegans right
It's probably 10%. No, I mean, it's kind of funny because, it's kind of funny because, and this is the interesting thing, and learning about, because I never thought it'd be social media stuff. I just thought it was stupid years ago. So you get into that and you realize, you can look at our last election, right?
Yep.
Why did Trump win the election? Because he controlled the message in the media and he got the exposure. And so to get the message out, I could sit there and nicely put up studies all day, and I put up plenty of studies on my Instagram, and people they go, man, I get 3 or 4 people to comment. But then I say, look at this goofy, how stupid this vegan is. And I get thousands of people that are like, it pisses some off. A lot of them support it, but at the same time, it engages people. And this is the deal. It literally is a propaganda war now. And the vegans have had a 30-year head start. They're well-funded. They got organizations like PETA that just put out bullshit. And the vegan doctors just sit back there and say, oh, I'm just a doctor. I don't have to say that stuff. We don't have the luxury of that. So we got to step up our game. You can't bring a knife to a gunfight, and we're in a gunfight. And so I'm doing what I can.
Ain't nobody going to make us eat vegetables, though. I mean, the thing is it's not like they're outlawing meat.
They are. That's the goal. They are trying to push for taxes on meat, which effectively, if you're a poor person and they tax meat, they basically made it illegal for you because you can't afford it. So they're going to economically pressure you not to eat it. If you live in Finland and you're in the Army right now, you must eat 2 vegetarian meals a week. The Finnish Army did that. If you work for a company,
they're never going to be a world power.
Well, no, but I mean, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing that in New York, right? In New York, Mayor De Blasio just announced all 1,800 of their public schools meatless Monday. So if you're a poor inner city kid and you're going to do,
I never had meat at my high school. They had pretend pizza. They had something that they called fish. I mean, I don't know what they served those kids anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the best quality meat, but replacing that with Beyond Meat,
right?
Canola oil crap.
That shit scares me. I looked at a thing I don't know, something like that, and it's terrifying the way it looks. I'm like, why are you guys trying to eat pretend meat? Like, why is it called faking? Why is it called tofurkey, you fucking weirdo? You love the animals, but you want to pretend you're eating them? That's so fucking creepy. That's the creepiest thing. People don't even realize what they look like to other people. Yeah, that looks ridiculous. Like you're a child. It's having tofurkey. Congratulations.
It's processed garbage, but it's highly profitable. Whenever I see plant-based, I think cheap and profitable. And this is what we're trying to greenwash. It's healthier for us.
The thing that pisses me off is because I try to eat in a certain macronutrient range. I don't want to spike my carbohydrates up. Whatever, all that. And then so you offer an option like that. All I know is it's not meat. So what the fuck is it? So now, I don't know what is engaged in your making of your tofurkey or your whatever.
Flip the label over. Look at the ingredients.
And it's garbage. It's garbage. It's scary. And so you're under the illusion. I mean, to me, it's all fuck. And I don't give a fuck how you eat, but it's like, goddamn, buyer beware. And that's trickier and trickier. That's black magic. Right there. That's the dark arts is what it is.
Fake meat is an $11 billion industry right now. It's projected to go to $25 billion by 2025.
They're starting to do it better and better. I mean, it's enticing.
And they're engaging, they're engaging celebrities and athletes to start pushing this stuff. And that's just the way it works. I mean, celebrities are pushing Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I mean, it's just more garbage, more processed food they want to push on us. And they're trying to make it like you're saving the planet when you're not. That's not how you save the planet. If we wanted to get into that, we would all support regenerative agriculture. We would push for that, and that's.
You ever read Michael Pollan's book, Omnivore's Dilemma?
I read parts of it, not the whole thing.
I thought the beginning was fascinating. And his conversation about corn and how that kind of usurped the regenerative farming, like that closed cycle farming stopped when the advent of that came in, and then we started. Remember when I was a little kid and they started subsidizing corn? I had no idea what that meant, and then now I do, and I'm like, so you got a failing business that they're gonna like? It just is ridiculous. The whole outset of it seems faulty, like it can't build into somewhere good, and then nobody cares that it goes into nothing because they're dead by the time that the thing they enacted bears fruit of emptiness and hollow dreams.
Yeah, I think this is an important concept that people say it's not sustainable. We can't do it. The problem is it likely is sustainable. If you do regenerative agriculture, you can increase the yield of the land by something like 8-fold by properly managing your animals. We could put 8 times as many cows in the U.S. that we have now. We could clearly feed the world. We could feed ourselves doing it that way, and we would improve the soil and create carbon sinks. I mean, but the will's got to be there.
I'm always really interested too in that. I mean, and those are all great benefits. But in the, if you could change the addiction processes, for lack of a better term, of a gross population amount of, if you could get the aggregate to get outside of that cycle, you think of how much more useful we are as a community and as a people that are moving forward when our thoughts are on formation of a functional and performance-driven society, as opposed to people feeling safety or something like that.
We have the wealth in the United States that we should be a nation of friggin' badass warriors. I mean, really. I mean, you look at like the Mongolians that conquered the biggest swath of land on earth. I mean, they lived on meat and milk. I mean, that was their diet. They didn't eat anything else. We have the financial resource that we should not have a nation of sick, fat, obese, depressed people. That's ridiculous.
Unless it's being directed that way by a higher force.
Well, I mean, it's profit. Profit is creating misery for the masses, and it's just as simple as that. And you don't.
And there's not a watchdog. There's not a politician there saying, no, this is hurting the people, so I don't want your check.
Right. No, they're happy to take the money and vote for the legislation that favors that. And so the question is, you can vote with your feet, you can vote with your pocketbook, you can move the market yourself to some degree, because the people producing your food will respond to that, but it takes some pressure and a while to do that. It takes some awareness, and I think that's one of the things I hope to do. And like I said, and again, the health message is so important. If you get a healthy person, you get somebody, you call them woke, right? You wake up, and then you're like you see all the rest of the bullshit that's out there, and then you become somebody that's useful to society, not a sheep or a sheeple.
I really appreciate your voice out there, man. It's nice because anybody that takes a deep dive into whatever it is, I think that it's super important. I need to flesh it all out, not to be punny.
Yeah, but I mean, Paul and I both, as most physicians do, we go into the profession to help people, and then you find out you're in a system that doesn't help people very well, and then you figure out something that does work, and you get very passionate about it, and you piss people off because you're not agreeing with what they say, and anytime you stand up and take a position, you got haters.
Of course,
right? Sure.
Yeah, there's the other side.
Yeah.
Right on. So again, tell them where they can find you.
I'm Sean Baker, 1967, Instagram, SBakerMD on Twitter. Check out meatheals.com. I got a book coming out, Carnivore Diet, on pre-order on Amazon, and then we're going to be starting animalbasednutritionnetwork.com very soon. We've got the World Carnivore Tribe, 27,000 carnivores, and we got an ex-vegan, the Restoration Health Vegan Recovery Group. So we take care of ex-vegans and try to help them out. And I know Paul's got some stuff.
Amazing, man.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Go ahead.
So people can go to my website. It's paulsaladinomd.com. I got a newsletter there. They can sign up for that. I've got a YouTube channel, and I just started a podcast. Mine is called Fundamental Health with Paul Saladino, MD. I'm also on Instagram at Paul Saladino, MD.
Right on, putting the fun in fundamental.
Trying, dude.
It's nice, man. When you guys, the smiles say it all. Really, and again, I really thank you for your work, and I look forward to see where it all goes.
Yeah, us too. Yeah.
And I love the idea of the simplification of it. It really takes all the.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to explain a diet to my dog, and I had to give him a menu and a macronutrient calculator, he'd be looking at me like, "What the hell, dude?"
My friend's dog dying, like all fucked up, brain injuries and this and that, and he's feeding him dog food. And I'm eating steak every day, and then I'd sometimes, like, I'm going out of town or whatever, and so I'd have extra. I'd start feeding his dog, and then he went out of town. I fed his dog nothing but meat for like 4 or 5 days, and she got better.
Yeah,
and she's doing, and it's an interesting thing, you don't ever consider things like that or things that sound crazy and then becomes the most helpful thing ever. So I really look forward to seeing where this goes, and I'd love to be a test subject if when you guys get it all rolling and you start doing studies and you want, like, yeehaw, man, because it's a fun conversation. It's really a neat place to be sitting, and I appreciate you guys being here.
Thanks for having us on, man.
I appreciate it, man. Awesome.